Good morning. Welcome to Unity Longmont Spiritual Center. We are blessed this morning to have Bobbie Wilson as our speaker and Faith Halverson-Ramos as our musician. So we will begin with music, Faith.
Here's a little chant to help set the scene today. I will be gentle with myself. I will love myself. I am a child of the universe, being born each moment. I will be gentle with myself. I will love myself. I am a child of the universe, being born each moment. I will be gentle with myself. I will love myself. I am a child of the universe, being born each moment.
Thank you, Faith. So let us take a breath together and go into prayer. Beloved presence, we are grateful to be gathered together, to be reminded of our divinity and the divinity of the entire world. We are all aware of great discomfort in our world at this time, and we open our hearts to the lives and loves of others. We open our eyes to the reality as we have co-created it here on earth. We are open to inspiration as to how to make changes in our individual lives and in our global life. And for all of that, we are grateful. And so it is. And Faith, if you'll provide us with more music, thank you.
So this is a song by Dale Worley. I am alive with the Spirit of God. And if you feel alive as well with the Spirit, join in. I am alive with the Spirit of God. I am alive with the Spirit of God. I am alive with the Spirit of God. I am alive, y'all, alive with the Spirit of God. I am 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 alive, y'all, alive with the Spirit of God. Now singing it to you. You are alive with the Spirit of God. You are alive with the Spirit of God. You are alive with the Spirit of God. You are alive, y'all, alive with the Spirit of God. We are 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 alive, y'all, alive with the Spirit of God. We are alive, y'all, alive with the Spirit of God.
Thank you, Faith. And we will hear from Bobbie Wilson. Thank you for being here today, Bobbie.
There I am. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. It's great to see everyone every Sunday in my little office. let's start with a meditation. Okay, so if you would just treat yourself to getting very comfortable wherever you are. Allow your eyes to close. And allow your senses to report to you what's happening in your body right now. Are you feeling the air on your skin? Are you aware of your breathing? Can you feel your pulse? Can you hear things? Perhaps the air conditioning or the traffic. Just be aware of the tiny movements and the tiny sensations that you are receiving right now. And be aware that you receive these all the time. But we're not always looking at them. We're not always focusing on them. Sometimes we're up in our mind, and that's good too. And sometimes we catch thoughts, and they just seem to pop up, and we become aware of them. And perhaps we're interested in them, so we spend some time with them. This thought or that thought. And then sometimes we attach to the thought and it takes us on a journey, a fantasy, or a nightmare. And then sometimes we get tired of that thought or we're distracted and we let it go until another thought comes along that attracts us. And we attach to that. It's sort of automatic, isn't it? This attaching to thoughts. So right now, as we're sitting quietly and we're aware of our body and our mind, I'm going to invite you to become aware of whatever thoughts are flashing in front of you. And I'm going to invite you to peer around the thought or peer between the thoughts and turn your attention to that little tiny gap, that little space between the thoughts. And don't force it, but just be aware that there is a space. And you can go there. And you can be there without thought at all. And if a thought pops up, just thank it very much and say, I'm going back to this little gap. I'm going to spend some time between you and the other thoughts. I'm going to explore this little gap. I'm not going to think about it, I'm just going to be with it. And perhaps that little gap seems to expand. And perhaps you can sense that space actually surrounding the thoughts. And perhaps as you move into that space, you can see a vastness in which little thoughts are flying, like clouds in the sky. I invite you to explore that for a few moments in our meditation, just being with the vastness, the space. And if you get attached to a thought, no worries. You can decide to follow it or let it go. No right or wrong. But if you can, let's experience this no thought space for a moment. Just be with it. And if your mind takes you away from that place, you can always decide to go back or not. As you are in that space, you might notice that there are no decisions to be made in that place. There are no conclusions to be drawn. There is nothing to assume. No opinions to hold. No explanations needed. It's a place where being, our core ground of being, resides and resounds. We could call it the Spirit of God. It needs nothing from us. And it is the source of everything, our life, and everything that supports it. And even as we visit this space, well, we're not visiting because this is actually where we reside all the time. We're just not aware of it. But as we become aware of this space, notice how our minds want to capture it, want to say it's like this or it's like that, or it feels this way or it looks this way. That's okay. That's just what minds do. And now, wherever you are in that spacious vastness, bring your awareness back into what you call yourself, the body, the mind, that uniqueness, that facet of this oneness. And as you do so, take a deep breath in, breath of immense gratitude for having something to breathe, and let it out with another prayer of thanks, with the experience of being. And when you are ready, let your eyes open and come back to the room, to your chair, to wherever you are.
Thank you, Bobbie, for that very gentle and loving invitation. Thank you. And Faith? Thank you, Faith, for that divine piece of music. And we have Bobbie for our talk.
Thank you. So today I wanted to talk a little bit, well, about what's going on and how we react and respond to it. And I'm doing a little bit of work on my own regarding how the mind works and how it tries to deal with everything that we're experiencing. And so what I come up with lately is looking at conclusions, assumptions, and questions. The definition of a question is a doubt about the truth or validity of something. Now, we have a lot of questions, but if you're like me, the minute I hit a question like, why is this going on? Or what am I supposed to do now? My mind starts spinning. It starts going, okay, what do we got? We got past data. Let's look at that. What have we done in the past about this thing? And it looks at everything in my experience and everything I've read about and everything I've studied, because it's a really, really good computer. I mean, it is an amazing tool. When you think about the mind, look, it can do this without any detail of instruction coming from me. It just does it. Isn't that amazing? It takes a drink of water automatically. So it's an amazing, amazing tool. And because it is, excuse me, I need another drink of water. Because it is such an amazing tool, we tend to give it full rein to try and explain to us the things that it is not programmed for. So, for example, the mind can't tell you who you are. It can't. It can tell you what your image is. It can tell you what you've done. It can tell you your credentials. It can tell you what you'd like to look like in the world. It can tell you all of that. But it has no clue about who you are. It has no idea who others are. It has to let go at that point. But does it? Mine doesn't. I don't know about yours, but when I meet somebody new, the first thing I do is make an assumption about that person. I look at them, I see their hair, their clothing, the color of their skin, their apparent background, and I make assumptions. And based on my mind's assumptions, I draw conclusions. Look, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying we need to be aware that we do that continuously and always. Because if we're not aware of that, then we're liable to take our assumptions and conclusions as the truth and not apply questions to them, not apply doubt about the validity or truth of our particular assumption or conclusion. And if you're like me, you have almost always been somehow wrong in your conclusions or assumptions about someone else. You may be right in a lot of ways, but there's always something there that you didn't see about them or that you didn't know about them, and your conclusions and assumptions got in the way of really picking up what they are and who they are. So I want to explore in our talk today a little bit about how we deal with curiosity, how we deal with certainty, and what role our minds play in directing us versus where they can and where they can't. So first of all, let's look at uncertainty. I hate uncertainty right out front. I don't like it. I don't like not knowing. My whole life, I've wanted to learn things. I've wanted to know things. I wanted to figure out how things work. And that works to a certain degree. I can figure out how an engine works. I can figure out how to categorize my files. I can figure out things like that. But there are certain things where I can't be certain. I do not know what comes next. I can have a high probability of knowing what comes next. For example, I have 2 little dogs, and they get up at dawn. Doesn't matter if dawn is at 7 or 5, they get up at dawn. They've always gotten up at dawn. Now notice how I make that conclusion, that assumption. They get up at dawn, they've always gotten up at dawn. And then I plan my life around that, because if they're up at dawn, I have to get to bed earlier so I can be up at dawn as well to let them out. Well, that thing's pretty probable. That could probably happen for the rest of their life and my life. But what about everything else? I have such an affinity to drawing conclusions and assumptions that am I really allowing myself to expand to the possibilities that are out there? So I drew some little pictures here. Sorry about this. Can you all see that? That's a little girl or a little person or a little adult. And she's walking along a line there that's supposed to be the timeline of her life. And she's walking along and she's encountering all these different events that are going to happen out in front of her. And she has encountered all the events on the line behind her. And so as she approaches the next step, she is informed not by what's going to happen in reality out there, but what has happened in the past and what is probably likely to happen because the future somehow looks a little bit like the past. So my little girl, my person, is walking along the timeline of life, and she reads the newspapers and she sees everything that's out there, and she goes, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And, you know, recently some friends and I were talking about, well, how do we deal with, and this particular problem was homelessness. What is ours to do with homelessness? And it's like, oh, we've got to do something. What will we do? What will we do? And, you know, each of us came up with a different response. Somebody said, we got to get out there and demonstrate. Somebody said, we got to vote. Somebody said, we got to change the politics. We got to do this. We got to spend more money. We got to contemplate. We got to meditate. We have all of these avenues. And guess what? They're all right. They're all true. But if our own experience is, this is how I would approach a conflict or a perplexing dilemma, is I would go into some form of activism, or I would go into some form of contemplation, or I would go into some form of getting more information. That's our individual and unique proclivity. So let me talk about some assumptions and conclusions that I've come to with regard to our spirit, who we are. And again, these are all expositions. They're my thoughts. They're my opinions based on what I have seen and heard and learned in my life, because what else do I have to base it on other than faith? But my observation is that we are all unique, that we all come with some form of talent or uniqueness or physical strength or intellectual abilities, and in a unique and uncopied combination. And it's supposed to be that way. And so how we respond to the events of the world will be shaped. No, I don't want to say it that way. How we respond to the events of the world is how our unique talents and proclivities show up. But if we try and respond to the events of the world without considering that, if we try and respond to the events of the world like we think we should, or like somebody else is, or like we're not equipped to, then we won't have a very effective response. So in my view, we are all facets of oneness. And as that, we are fed what it is we're supposed to do. We are given our response. So let's take our little girl here. And let's look at, once she gets the sense of an awareness here, wait a minute. There's more to me than that little road I'm walking in my little self. I sense there's an eternal factor there. And you look at the vertical line, that represents eternity. The horizontal line represents time. And wherever that person is, wherever I am, eternity and time are intersecting. If I take a step, the vertical line moves with me. I am never without the eternal aspect of life. I am never without that which breathes me, that which beats my heart, that which supplies my needs. So once we realize that eternal, that spiritual factor, once that wakens up in us and we say, oh, wait a minute, there's more to me than I know, then when the world shows up, and it's really showing up now, there's no way we can avoid it. It shows up with, I was reading a David Brooks article. I love David Brooks. And he had 5 major crises that we're undergoing. And if I can just name a few, there's COVID-19, there's economic shutdown, increasing poverty, racial tensions, lack of leadership, police brutality, ecologic destruction, supremacy, etc., etc. Yeah, it's huge. And the little me that isn't aware of my eternal characteristic tends to panic, tends to go into, what do I do? The fight or flight response comes in. It can get violent. It can get warlike. It can blame. It can resent. It can want to lash out at all those things in the world. Or the eternal part of me can say, wait, pause, check in. You don't know what you're supposed to do? Let me tell you. Let me show you. And it's just as we in our meditation went into that space between thoughts and maybe experienced a little bit of that vastness, that eternalness about us. Maybe we can touch that every time we are personally faced with interacting with the world that looks so demented right now. So here's our little girl who is touched in. Can you see her? Okay. There is a world of vast intelligence that our minds are unaware of. Our minds are not programmed for, but our minds can open to. Our minds can receive, things can be revealed to us. Actions can be made known to us. Ideas and thoughts can come to us as we allow ourselves to question our own conclusions and assumptions. Can we be humble enough to stop walking alone and start walking with all that we are, not just that part of us that we think we know? And it requires great humility, because we have to say very often, almost always, I don't know, but there is a part of our beingness that does know. And allowing it to be with us and to inform us and take us through the world. That is, in my view, and here's a conclusion, I could be wrong, but that is the purpose of our lives. To reconnect so that all of the facets, here's a little diamond, we're each a facet of this wholeness here. And all of these billions of facets that we are contribute to the structure of the oneness that we are. And all of the facets of that self that we are allows us to operate, to intersect with the world that we see, that our minds kind of show us, but we don't see the whole of it yet. We are the whole of it. We are emerging intelligence, consciousness, bringing the whole of it to life. And we do that by touching back, by bringing our oneness, giving it expression through our own bodies, through our own minds, through our own connections with that oneness and with each other. And if you get into that energy, It has the quality of gratitude. It has the quality of great thankfulness. It has the quality of great appreciation for the world as it is. As it is. It doesn't dream about a happy world. It doesn't condemn the world as it is. It doesn't blame others for it. It embraces it. Because, and I will go back to my fundamentalist beginnings, for God so loved the world. That's it. That's our purpose. And we bring that love through our own open consciousness, through our own ability to question our conclusions, question our assumptions, question our dogma, question our path even, always opening to the next new revelation, always being with our being. And I think that's it.
Wonderful, Bobbie. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And we'll move to music from Faith.
This is a song by Donna Michael called A Light in This World. I am a light, I am a light, I am a light in this world. I am a light, I am a light, I am a light in this world. And I shine, and I shine, and I shine so bright. And I shine, and I shine, and I shine so bright. You are a light, you are a light, you are a light in this world. You are a light, you are a light, you are a light in this world. And you shine, and you shine, and you shine so bright. And you shine, and you shine, and you shine so bright. We are a light, we are a light, we are a light in this world. We are a light, we are a light, we are a light in this world. And we shine, and we shine, and we shine so bright. And we shine, and we shine, and we shine so bright. And we shine, and we shine, and we shine so bright. And we shine, and we shine, and we shine so bright.
Thank you, Faith. So it's at this time that we go into our donation of love and light by placing our hands on our heart and taking a deep, full breath and allowing that love and light, that divinity, to expand beyond ourselves and shared with the wider world. And so it is. And we'll end our service with music from Faith.